two big races, maybe the two biggest one. We just mentioned them just by chance. Pennsylvania and Georgia. Here's Fox News on their final pitch for Dr. Oz last night on Tucker Carlson, and I'm not being facetious. Republican candidates have shown up on Fox, like incredibly outpacing MSNBC, just because I know people like to make those parallel comparisons. I mean, in a way that is, there's just like, this has always been the Republican communications department, essentially. And to the extent that it has not been at different times, it's just because that there were personal disagreements with Trump. But here is Tucker Carlson, Republican spokesperson for the Republican Party at the moment, with, yes, a doctor.
A medical doctor who feels comfortable making these assessments on air.
Yes, like Brill Freist back in the day when he was telling us about Majority Leader in the Senate and actually diagnosing a woman who was in a vegetative state in the state of Florida. Because that's called telehealth. Here we go.
And Fetterman himself has said that his stroke was due to a blood clot from the heart. That is very significant, Tucker, because a study out of a journal called Stroke, very prominent journal looking at over 6,000 people from Great Britain, have found that if your blood clot comes from the heart, you have about less than a 60% chance, more than a 60% chance of either not living 5 years or having another stroke within those 5 years. It's greater than 60% chance. So I say to the voters of Pennsylvania tonight who are ready to check a box tomorrow, I think before you check a box, you should consider a statistic like that. Greater than 60% chance that someone like Fetterman, with a heart in his condition, having had a stroke, will either have a recurrence or won't survive the term. Tucker?
I really hate to hear that.
Yeah. Barely concealing his so devil-toothed grin.
Have not looked into that that study and or the doctor's claims to know the state, the particular health of Fetterman, but let's be honest. Half the Senate, I'd be surprised if they're going to make it through this term.
Dianne Feinstein can't remember what she had for breakfast this morning, and Chuck Grassley is currently on the ballot for another 6-year term at 89, tweeting out like different, typos about pigeons in his yard. And there have been 2 senators sitting, you haven't heard about it, but this calendar year, who have had strokes. You just haven't heard about it because it's not in, Tucker Carlson or Dr. Mark Siegel's advantage to highlight that.
Is Chuck Grassley going to be 95 at the end of his next term? I mean, look, my great uncle would go to rock concerts at age 94, but that was basically it for the week. It wasn't like he was going 4 nights a week. It was like I went to a rock concert and then I rested for the rest of the week.
Why doesn't 538 have a whole actuarial section where it's like, this is the rates of this person's going to die? So maybe because it's not the most important thing.
And maybe because some of those people would be a little bit higher up on that list that we mentioned than John Fetterman.
What are the statistical chances that either Trump or Biden is going to make it to the end of their term, right, at this point? But that's what their pitch is at the end, and that has been, I think probably somewhat effective in terms of moving some voters. We'll see in Pennsylvania. I don't know. I really don't know. We know, you can see it a little bit in the polls, but it's hard to disaggregate what it is. And then, of course, this is, the idea of Herschel Walker winning in Georgia is one of those things where you sort of feel like, maybe this experiment is over in terms of America. But here's Herschel Walker's closing statements. He really, once he nailed that pronoun thing, he really went for it.
And y'all saying that I don't need to run. Yes, I do. because the grace of God has done so much for me. Now it's time for me to pay back. And as they say, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. That's what I'm about right now. That's what I'm about right now. Because wait a minute. And now they're going after our military too with all this pronouns. And I'm like, pronoun? What the heck is a pronoun? My pronoun is sick and tired of this, because Senator, one of our pronouns is going to be former senator. That's a good pronoun for him, former senator. And then we got to say, don't let that door hit you in the backside as you leave the people's office. Don't you think that's the best thing to do? And y'all.
I love the idea, like, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. Like, you could trans bash for the sake of your country, and you could mock trans people. That's one thing you could do.
What the heck is an adjective? What the heck is a verb?
What's an adverb?
Ask
Yeah.
not what your country can do for you. Ask if it's Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve.
Exactly. That's where we're at, folks. So if you have the opportunity to go out and vote, let's do it. We will have, the recriminations will start tomorrow. But for today, go out there and vote. We're going to take a break in just a moment, and when we come back, we'll be talking to Amjad Iraqi, editor at 972 Magazine. And if you think our the state of our country electorally and just sort of like in terms of ideologically is bad, wait till you hear about the Israeli election results. I mean, it's not hard to sort of contemplate what's happening in this country in terms of a rightward drift. I mean, we have a lot more sort of, I think, like, we are a far more diverse country, so I think trends are a lot slower in this country in many respects, and because of the sort of like the geographic dispersion and the nature of our government, in some ways, the population can move in two different directions, and they're, for now anyways. But if you look at like what's happened in Israel over the past 20 years, and you look at like different places in Europe, and you look at like with, frankly, where Russia is going, and the common cause they're beginning to make with some of the sort of Christian fundamentalists in this country, you start to see some like broad trends that are not terribly encouraging. So we're probably going to be drinking a lot tonight.
Yeah. Tune in, folks.
Yeah, tune in. Should be really, really disturbing. It's quite possible it's going to be really disturbing to like 15, 20 years. I mean, I've been saving this for a while, but, I don't know, this week in particular. Oosh. And of course, you'll notice that each time what they do is they go right for the courts. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why the center left, through the left, can't quite understand, like really, really genuinely appreciate this. To the extent that this show has been dedicated to anything over the course of the past 10 years, it has been attempting to sort of make people understand the importance of the federal judiciary. But you hear it there in Israel as well. And it really just about anywhere. When you're talking about fascists, the more often than not, maybe always, they attempt to put what they're doing within the context of a legal framework. And there are two different ways in which you can do that. One is you can pass legislation that says this is legal. Yeah, it was illegal before, but it's legal now. And the other way you could do that is also control the judiciary so that the statutes, what they actually mean, changes.
Yeah, well, it cuts off regular people's also recourse against the government when it's violating their rights, particularly
the judiciary is a check. Well, almost in every country, theoretically, the judiciary is a check against unbridled, government power, or and if you control the judiciary, that it's gone.
It's what we talked about. I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before, but the difference between the right is ideologically unified and the left is just a bunch of interest groups. And how do you deliver judges for just a different set of interest groups? And we know which interest groups are going to be, particularly like wealthier ones, are going to be the ones delivered for.
It's just like it's so stark in Israel in particular, especially when you're reading about the different settlements that are happening right now in the West Bank. Like, some of these Palestinian people have had these homes for generations, and then Israeli settlers come in. They say, no, this is my home. There's no other way to fight it except to go through the Israeli court system. They go through the Israeli court system, and every time the Israeli court said, well, you didn't have a permit for your home, so now it's either in a military zone or it's under review, and essentially forcing them out in the latter case. And that's all legal, but that's just because only one side is controlling every mechanism of power. And as we see in this interview, they're beginning to control not just like an overwhelming majority of the power mechanisms of power, but every mechanism of power. And it's not getting better. It's just getting worse.
And again, that's why I think the judges are so important in this country. I mean, we just had a federal judge who, for the moment, temporarily roll back any of New York State's gun restrictions. We're just going to see this. We're going to see this in terms of, this case that's in front of the Supreme Court today, in terms of basically a citizen's ability to ensure that laws are being carried out faithfully by particular states, federal laws that are, that the states may try and avoid executing. We're going to see it in turn. I mean, it's just going to be a cascade of a diminishment of rights of people in this country. We've just seen the rollback of an individual right that has existed for 50 years. And the scary part is, it could very well have a mitigating influence on what the outcome is tonight. If we're lucky, it'll have a determinative influence on the outcome tonight. But sort of like getting to that end of the list of what it's going to take, right? Like, I get it. People don't like Joe Biden. He's old. He is old. He walks around there and you do have a feeling of like, is he going to make it through this speech? The Democrats delivered about, a third, quarter of what their agenda originally was. I get it. Joe Manchin, Kristen Sinema's at fault. There was also, I think, some strategic and tactical errors made. But, at the end of the day, it's also like the Republicans just took away an individual right from 50% of the population, which doesn't, also, frankly, I mean, has implications for the entire population. But it's, and in doing so, in many respects, basically said, not real. I mean, you're like a full class citizen, but not really. Put you around like, I don't know, 19th, 20th. Let's put it that way. You just lost a 20th of your citizenship, or maybe like, I don't know, like a third, a quarter, somewhere around there. And they're just going to keep going. And I don't know what sounds the alarm bells more. I mean, that's why we're seeing like in blue states. The reason why the Republicans are playing in blue states is because, folks haven't like gotten the memo that this could be a federal ban in a couple of years. And I don't know that Democrats did a great job of pushing that concept. I'm not sure how you would necessarily, but
they lied to you then, they'll lie to you now.
Well, Lindsey Graham introduced the
I
damn
know,
thing.
right? They
I mean, so, but, all right.
But also, can I just say one thing on elections? Like, Labor supports Democrats. It's easy. Vote
Yeah.
for the Democrats. I mean, of course, all the abortion stuff. I hope that turns stuff out. But like, I don't understand this whole like contrarian brand of like, or like the right wing thing acting like we need to like have Fetterman's like up to date health info. Labor supports him. So vote for that guy.
The only labor that doesn't support Democrats are like
Cop unions.
Are cop unions.
Yeah.
That's the only ones. Those are the only ones.
Keep them moving. Like, vote for the people who Labor supports.
it is really not
And
that complicated.
It should be. I mean, we should have like Labor have a more independent and forceful voice in that coalition, and it's a problem that it doesn't. But until like unions start splitting between Democrats and Republicans, it should be obvious who you should.
Or
turn
the
out
Green
for.
Party, for that matter.
Right.
Like, I mean, it's just a vote is not an individual expression of your heart. It's not an expression of like your artistry. You can go
Or what
to
you
a
think about that individual
go to a
candidate.
painting class. It's not a litmus test for yourself. That's actually narcissistic to put that at the front of your mind. It's a strategic choice, and you vote with. It's like not that hard, as Matt said. Vote with Labor, and then get back to activism and pushing the Democrats later.